King of lives, the king of lives.
Here we are, king of live streams. Here we are, everybody. We are live, and we are talking with Ryan Cahill, author of The Bound and the Broken. And we are going to begin, just so everybody knows, spoiler free. And I'm joined here by my buddies Christopher Navo and John from Talking Story. And unfortunately, Mike from Mike's Book Reviews will not be with us. We wish our dear friend Mike well. He had a procedure.
He's not dying.
Yeah. Procedure recently done, and he's got some medication that is wreaking havoc with him. So he is sitting this one out, but he'll be back when we convene again to discuss Of Empires and Dust, which we are all very excited about. So we're going to spend the first part of this spoiler free. And after, 20 minutes, half an hour, we're going to get into spoilers for, well, really the entire series, but we're going to focus mainly on Of War and Ruin and The Ice, which are the most recent books that we have talked about. Now, John and Christopher and I and Mike have talked about all the other books and novellas in the series so far. And they appear on various channels from our group. I'll have to make a playlist of all these. I don't think I've done that yet, but we will do so. So yeah, we are excited. We are very excited. And I thought I'd just like to start, actually, Ryan, by congratulating you on finishing Of Empires and Dust. It's just such
I'll express how happy I am.
Got to be a great feeling. How are you feeling right now, Ryan?
Yeah.
I was saying to I can't remember who it was the other day, because we were just talking about Sanderson. I'm not switching the conversation over to Sanderson, but we're talking about Sanderson and just massive books and stuff like that. And then I realized that with a year to spare, I wrote this entire series between Rhythm of War and this release. That is how much I've been writing. And so the reason I'm bringing that up is to answer the question, to say finally a tiny sense of relief. I am actually going to take a short break between this one.
Yes.
Just to breathe and to be with my new daughter and stuff. I think I was working really hard, like really, really hard over the last 3 or 4 months, which is why I've been absent from basically everywhere, to make sure that I could take advantage of the opportunity that most new dads don't have. I work from home and I work in this field, so I can actually get ahead and then spend some time.
I'd say your priorities are correct, Ryan. And I'm very excited for you. So. I'm very, very excited for you, because when I actually started, when I announced that I was publishing my own books, you very kindly reached out to me and said, hey, would you like any tips? Because you had gone through this publishing journey yourself. And I will always be grateful for that. You appear in my acknowledgments in the way of a Dan, in fact. And I'll always be grateful for the fact that you did that. And I love that you're so supportive of your fellow authors, and that here's our fellow Quilluminati here, Brian. It feels good when good people meet with success through hard work. So I feel really happy for you, Ryan. And I'm sure that John and Christopher feel the same.
What you'll learn is I'm going to get extremely uncomfortable under the weight of a compliment. So it's the only time you'll see me quiet.
Well, I'll give you a compliment, because you were a great steward, because Dr. Chase passed on everything he learned from you to me when we were getting our book out. And he said, I'm just going to teach you what Ryan taught me. So it's trickled all the way down, man.
Yep. This is how it works. But we're at a very exciting point now. And I keep hearing really...
Yeah, me too.
You're hearing something?
No, you said I keep hearing. I'm hearing this replaying again. And I don't have another window open.
You have an echo. Okay, I can't hear an echo. Christopher or John, you hear an echo?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I think it just stopped. I don't know what happened.
Technology.
But I think I'm good now.
Yeah. So I was about to say what I'm hearing
very confused for a while there.
The people who have arcs right now of Empires and Dust. I'm hearing some early enthusiasm. And
I was going to say so. Am I.
Yeah. It's so difficult. I don't know. Philip. I'm used to calling Philip Sequentrell is a good friend of mine, and I always shorten his name to Phil, and for some reason you seem like a Philip to me, not a Phil.
I am a Philip.
But
it's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
I know I've asked you that before, but also I really feel it. But yeah, like I don't know what process you went through with your advanced readers and stuff, but it's probably the most nerve-wracking thing for me is that exact phase, because that's with the beta reads. I give it to my beta readers, and look, I know I'm giving it to you saying, hey, here's a word vomit full of holes with the general concept of what I'm trying to create here. You're probably going to miss a lot of the nuances of the character work and stuff, because I'm testing you as you're my sounding board. So if I'm getting it wrong, if this character isn't giving you if I'm not getting the emotion, eliciting the right emotional response from you with this character, this is where I'll make the change. And so the ARC readers are the first people getting the book, the finished book, and it is scary as shit.
You're getting some compliments here.
But no matter what you do, like, I think it's something that a lot of new authors maybe don't realize, and it took me a long time to realize, is it's not that ever disappears. It's just, I feel like there's two different types of author. There's this one author who like runs into a room and is just like, I am the best writer that's ever existed. I am the next. And then you have another author who comes in and sits in a corner and has a drink, and they're like, yeah, cool. I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. And it will surprise you which is which. Like, many of the authors that I know who are huge international bestsellers are the ones who every single time they write a book question it.
Yeah.
Like every time. And I kind of believe that if you're not questioning it, you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough.
I would totally agree with that.
If you're confident, then you haven't pushed yourself outside your comfort zone. And like, it's something that I've tried to do with every single book. And I think people see that. Like, I think you can, like, it's one thing that I can guarantee anyone. People asked me before, I was on the Two to Ramble book club, and someone asked me, hey, sell me your second book because I didn't really like your first one. What would make me go and do the second one? And I was like, honestly, I would say just don't. Like, if you want to, jump into it. I can guarantee you it is better than the first. Yep. Because I've pushed myself hard enough that categorically, objectively, the craft of writing in that book is better, because part of the thing that I enjoy is getting better. I cannot guarantee you that you'll enjoy it more. So that's your own prerogative. So it's one of those things is just always trying to push yourself and get better with it. And, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. And so it's scary when you push yourself and you're trying these new things and you're like, I fucking hope I don't ruin this.
Yeah. Well, I know that I have enjoyed every book even more than the last in the series, and I do see you pushing yourself, growing as a writer, and that is just such a pleasure. I've compared you to John Gwynne in the past, not just for the plot or anything like that, just the spirit of it, the heart of it. Really, what I love about your series is it has that heart. And I also see a similarity in that you and you can see the growth in the writing as it progresses. So I just love it. I absolutely love seeing that.
I think John, for me, was one of the first authors that I read who did what I classified as grim heart. So it's where he took a gritty world and didn't make it nihilistic. Like, there's really dark aspects to it, and he does dig into them. But there's always an underlying sense of hope. And in a world with plenty of great characters, there's also heroes trying to do the right thing. I think that's one of the big differences. Everyone always wonders how you classify Grimdark. And a lot of the time in Grimdark, for me, I classify it with the characters. And it's that nobility, not nobility in the characters, but you will very rarely in a Grimdark book find a truly good person trying to do their best and the resulting plot not killing them for that fact. Plenty of people might die in my book who are heroes, but the one hero isn't going to die because he's a hero, like Ned Stark. His honor and nobility isn't going to be what just kills him as a plot point. And I think John did that for me, and it was one of the things I loved the most. So that's definitely something that I took into my writing from reading John.
Yeah, you're definitely doing your own thing at this point. I can say that for sure. I want to give my friends here, John and Christopher, a chance to give their thoughts about the series thus far. We're staying away from spoilers.
Oh no, I'm fine to listen. You guys are doing great.
You're doing great.
See, John has a whiskey, and I'm really tempted, but it's also only 11:40 a.m.
I poured a little green spot just for you, my friend.
I have yellow spot over here. Yellow spot's my favorite. Oh. And there's a green spot with in a French wine cask, and it's incredible. Sorry, I just derailed everything with whiskey talk.
Oh, that's quite all right. But Christopher, how about you?
Last time I drank this early, I ended up passed out on a couch by about on a podcast or on a live video with Crystal, myself and Crystal Matar and a few others. Myself and Crystal drank. It was 10 a.m. for me, and I was passed out on the couch by about 12:30.
Wow, you have fans of your recaps here, by the way, which we just finished reading today. The new recap is up for Of War and Ruin, everybody. So yes, it's up, it's there.
There's a lot of typos, just beware.
Right. They'll be ironed out eventually.
I was tipsy to drunk while writing most of it.
Okay.
No, definitely appreciate it though. I mean, it's been a while for us.
Yeah, Christopher, we were just talking before you popped on. Like when you go back through this, it's like, there's stuff happens in this series.
Yeah.
Like,
just but it's like as soon as I was reading the recap, I was like, I remember that. I had a note about that, and I had this marked down, and I was like, I remember this stuff now. Yeah, it was like as soon as you read that recap, it's like it all comes, pretty bad.
I think the thing for me is
3 months ago.
Oh, sorry, there's a minor time delay, so I ended up talking over you.
Oh, you're good. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh no, I was just saying, and when I do the recap, I obviously have to just do brief skims over the chapters and stuff. And like as the author, it's weird saying it as the author, but like as I'm going and I'm reading the first few chapters and I see how like one character gets introduced to another or spends a bit of time with another, and then in my head, because obviously I read the end part of the book more recently than the start of the book, these characters already have an emotional connection. And it's funny for me, and it's part of the reason why I like long form storytelling in a single book, and why I feel strongly about when people say this book could be split. It could be, absolutely. It would not be the story that you're reading though, at all, because the laws of storytelling dictate essentially that the longer I'm pulling this payoff off for, the larger the payoff has to be, and you can't create that side of tension in shorter fiction. But it's a craft choice. But when I'm reading the start of it, and I go, wow, how did this happen inside one book? How did they get there and it not feel weird? And that was weird for me reading back, because that was obviously a big difference between A Darkness and Light, which is 250,000 words instead of 437.
So I do want to give Christopher and John, if you guys have a question for Ryan, go ahead and shoot, or if you want to talk about the series thus far. Also, people in the chat, if you have non-spoiler questions, for the moment, we're going to get into spoilers later. That's going to be fun, but wait for the announcement. But if you have non-spoiler questions for Ryan as well, we'll try to get to those. But Christopher or John, what would you like to ask Ryan, or what would you like to say about the series so far, your experience of it?
You want to go first, Christopher?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. I think we're all writers here. Philip well established already. John on his way. I got maybe another year or so. As somebody writing a multiple character book, I've always wondered how other people. I mean, I think you do, and I'm doing the compliment thing, so sorry, but I'm just wondering how you so smoothly you handle your multiple characters really well. I think, and I think they come off smooth throughout the pages. It's not jarring to be skipping to different parts of the book, especially in this last one where your character glossary is just doubled to not tripled. I mean, do you have it just all in your head, or do you do some sort of mapping or planning or anything?
This is a real interesting one. You could have a whole YouTube discussion just on the craft of that one element. But there's different, I use very specific different techniques. I've said this before on other on interviews and things, where when I wrote Blood and Fire, I knew I wanted this to be the multi-POV epic that I was trying to write, but I also knew I just wasn't good enough at the time. So I tried to be self-aware and go, I'm literally not good enough as an author. This is the first time I've ever written. It would be a misstep for me to try and run before I could walk. So I also wanted to write the story. So with Blood and Fire, I wrote it with 90% Caelan's point of view. And then I went and I put a little smattering of the other points of view, just so the reader wouldn't be dunked into an ice bath when they found the multi-POVs in book 2. And then I went and I intentionally wrote The Fall with the purpose of practicing narrative voice and strength. by creating 4 different points of view, all seeing the same thing through different lenses. So like you'll see like there's a part where like Elvira and Kalimvar, this is like, I'm assuming we can do spoiler for the fall, because in the fact that it's like it's not really a spoiler. Actually, it's not a spoiler.
Plug your ears if you don't want to hear about the fall.
They walk through a corridor. They walk through a corridor.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing. But what I wanted to practice was what they see. So Elvira sees memories and she sees beauty, and Kalimvar sees a carpet that is blood red next to the pale white of a dead body. And that's how he sees it. He sees the red carpet on the white as death. And I was trying to practice that narrative voice and strength. And then when I went into writing the larger ones, I had multiple things I wanted to do. So I wanted to make sure that narrative voice rung through in the different characters. So what I did beforehand is I sit down, I go through my characters, and I think, all right, cool. You know, what does this character need? What does they want? Who do they love? Who do they hate? How do they feel? What are their major flaws? Because our flaws always dictate how we see the world. And that's one of the things that I've really wanted to do, and I focus on it really, really strongly in the Vampires in Dust. Like as I practice character work and try to get better.
Yeah.
And
you
then with
you
the
really
transitions, and it's something that I've worked on a lot. And like especially going into A Vorn Ruin, it's that differentiation of character and trying to. I firmly believe like one of the strongest things to do when you're not sure with a character if a scene isn't working. What I would usually do is I will put another character with a really strong narrative voice into that scene and show me what they would do and what they would see. And that strength of characterization from that character will help me inform the other character, if that makes sense. So sometimes I might go and I'll say, right, I'm going to drop Dane into this scene instead because he has a really strong narrative voice in how he feels and what he wants to do and who he's willing to protect and what he'll do to protect them. So if this is what Dane would do, now I know that Rist would do something very different. And Rist is also another one with a very strong narrative voice. So like you'll notice in the chapters when they write Rist, Rist wanders a lot. He rambles in his own brain and internal thoughts all the time, and he focuses on things that other people would never focus on. And it's part of his narrative structure. And Dane will have a lot of internal dialogue because he's always questioning himself because he's been alone for so long. And so it's one of those things that I've tried to do. And then this is a long answer, but a big one for me with writing the long books and those transitions was something that I'm sure someone else has a better name for, but I call tonal resonance. So when I'm getting towards the end of a chapter, I want to make sure that I'm shifting the tonal resonance of that the tone of that chapter resonates into the next chapter. So either I'm signaling who is coming next or the tone of what's coming next. So I need to drop something in so that when you go into it, same thing, you're not getting dunked into cold water. And hopefully, if I've done it right, the thing that's coming next is the thing that you don't know that you want.
Nice.
And it's like the hardest choices I'll ever make are when you have these cliffhanger moments and deciding whether or not to delay it or to give it to the reader. And it's one of those where I'll get to that point and I'll read back a few chapters and go, have I given them something?
All right.
In the last 5-6 chapters, have I given them like the carrot and the stick? Like have I given them something sweet in the last 5 or 6 chapters? Are they going to be craving something? Or will this piss them off if I delay it? And so that's like, I will sit there and just kind of go through that and go, yeah, okay, sweet. This is the time where, no, I need to jump straight into that again. Because, you know, as a reader, you get fatigue, like, and you'll kind of go, okay, I'm ready for this. I'm ready for this. I'm ready for this. And you get ready. And then 5 different points of view and 5 more chapters until the piece that I want. So I'm like, if I think that they'll have that feeling, then I'm gonna put that next chapter straight away.
Beautiful.
That was a really long answer. Sorry.
That's all right. Ryan wants to know why you stole his name.
Well, I think you have to file it with my parents.
Let's get him on the phone.
I don't believe I was involved in the decision.
Carissa wants to know when the physical format comes out for A Vampires
So that
in
one,
Dust.
I'm not entirely sure. So the only reason that's delayed is just with my baby being born. A lot of my timelines got pushed out, and with the complications at her birth, I kind of lost about a month and a half of writing. So I'm behind on getting the proofread ready to get that to the formatter, because the book is so large that we need to try and make sure it fits. Like legitimately, we need to make sure it fits. So I'm hoping like mid-April, but it just depends on whether complications arise when the formatter gets it.
All right. We've got another one here from Effapax. My question is, did you know the direction you were going with Ella's character from the beginning? We're not going to spoil exactly what happens with Ella right now, but we're going to talk about it later. We're going to big time. But did you know where you were going with her from the beginning, or was it a longer evolution, Ryan?
The answer to that is yes. So there's some characters that when I write, I kind of like to have a framework, but I don't overly plot. So I know the major things that will happen. I know the last scene in the whole series. I know the last scene in every single book before I start writing the book, and then I know where I want each character to go, kind of like bumpers at a bowling alley. All right, they can't go too far left and right. I want them to get here. All right, and I know that. I just don't know what's going to happen all the time in between, because I want to give myself freedom to write, because as the characters grow and change, the logical decisions they would make will change. So I find that's something you'll see in a story, is when you don't know why something isn't working. Like as a reader, if you feel it's weird, it's because most of the time it's because the author has pushed their plot ahead of the character evolution. So as the character evolves, they might not make the choice that you plotted them to make. And if you don't bend to that, then you'll come up with an illogical situation where a character breaks their internal logic to move your plot the way you wanted it to. So like that will happen, where those things will change based on the character. But with Ella and with a few other ones, it's been there for a while, and like you'll see now, like it was interesting. Like, remember watching one of your videos with you, Philip, and you had said like the druids kind of came out of nowhere. But as you get to book 4, what I've tried to do is it's trying to mix. Some people don't like when you hide too much from them, and other people don't like when things are too subtle. And it's a real hard balance, because you have some people who, I don't understand this and I don't do this, and you're in the beta read and you're kind of going, shit, should I make it more explicit? But then that takes some of the nuance out for the readers who like to dig down. And so when you get through book 4, this is where I start. There's no spoilers. When you get through book 4, this is where I start to show some of the things that have been there since book 1. And some of them I'm not being overt about. You have to look at them, and then if you go back, you can see I've left the crumbs for you to be able to figure out what was there, but I'm not going to tell you. There's some things where I won't even mention it, and it's just, if you do go back and read, you will realize something.
Of all the things I said in that video, I think that's the only thing you remember.
I remember all of them, but I think the reason I remembered it,
he's been waiting months to throw that one back up.
No, but it's actually not a critique. It's exactly what I want.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. So it's what I tried to do. It's like with certain characters who might show up in book 2 and 3. What I want is for you to not notice them in book 1, and then when you go back and look, you realize the threads and the connections. It's the same principle as when you write a murder mystery. You should not, the best murder mystery, you should not be able to figure it out beforehand, but should always be able to retrace your steps when you're told the answer. And so I wasn't picking it out to go, haha, Philip. It was more a case of wait till you see.
And I definitely have. So I think you addressed this a little bit where you're talking about or answering the previous question, but Joe asks, have you learned anything new about the characters?
Yeah, all the time. And because I think you should, because as your characters change as well, who they are changes, and that's you learning something new about them. And it's like, what you'll see is there's what you'll call like iconic characters or archetypal characters. So like Aeson is like a Gandalf is like an archetypal character, okay?
Sure.
And traditionally those characters don't change. So even in older fantasy, you'll see like character arcs aren't really as big a deal. And so those classic characters, the iconic people, the noble wizard who trains people, they don't evolve or change a lot. They're not meant to. They're meant to mentor the younger characters. And so sometimes I'll see that, and what I've tried to do with other characters, like say for instance Aeson, who is a typical archetypal character, when you look down. But when you're realizing is, then you look at Dan, who is this happy-go-lucky goofball type character. But part of the core thing for me is showing that Dan's humanity is teaching Aeson something new. And maybe Dan doesn't need to change as much as you thought he did. And it's one of those, I love having a surface concept of what the character is, and using their narrative to dig deeper. And sometimes that does, it teaches me new things about characters. And especially when you put a character in a new situation, like I try and get into the heads of the characters. I try not to dictate what they'll do. So in a chapter, I'll say, okay, this chapter has this mood. I want this ending. And I need to have these characters wanting or needing X, Y, or Z at the end of the chapter. But what happens in the chapter, I have no structure on. So I want to let them decide what happens. And sometimes when something happens and how that character reacts will surprise me a little bit. And then if I go back in and edit, I'll double check. But like, yeah, no, actually, yeah, that is exactly what they do.
Yeah. I just want to agree with Dan here. I mentioned it already at the beginning about you're a good soul, Ryan. And I think a lot of people have seen that. We have a couple I want to get to Corey's question, and then we'll bring it back to John here in a moment. But do you write, this is Corey, another writer, by the way, here.
I know Corey.
Yeah, good. Do you write in order, plot in order more accurately, or do you have chapters / arcs you shift around afterwards? So how much of a planner are you, Ryan?
Yeah, I think I answered that earlier in the fact that like I will have the end. I think if you ever struggle with finishing a novel, figure out your ending first, right? It's much easier to get somewhere if you know where you're going. Okay, that's advice. I'm sure some people will tell me I'm an idiot for saying it, but if you struggle with finishing a novel, try thinking of where you're going first, because it's much harder to get lost. And then I try and put the different beats in, like I was saying. So say, for instance, Ella's character, all right? I'm not going to give an example. I'm just going to say Ella's character, I know she starts here. I want her to end here. I want her to experience these 5 major events. And I want her demeanor, her mood, her skill level, her likability, her agency to have changed in this way by the time I get to the end of the book. And that's how I'll know. And then as I'm writing, I will think of these events that are happening. And that this is a part where it goes more random. I'll think of these events that will happen that can cause these changes and these effects. And I will try my best to make sure there are events that affect other things, just to try and make the writing more dynamic.
Couple more questions from our good people in the chat. You've worked, this is from Lorraine.
It's like speed dating.
Yeah, I tell you. You're doing really well too. You have worked with so many cool artists for character art, etc. Is there anyone else you'd like to work with? Yeah, the artists are great, aren't they, Ryan?
There's just so many. And I'm actually, Peng Lu is currently doing black and whites for the standard indie edition for Vampires and Dust, which is great.
Awesome.
But there's so many. There's one that I'm getting a chance to work with, and I haven't actually announced it yet. But Francesca Beyrald is doing like a full like A1 map in her style for the world, which is incredible. Okay, I'm getting the physical one, which I'm going to keep in my house. But then it's just a beautiful. I don't know if you've seen her like Game of Thrones maps and her Thetis maps, and they're amazing. But there's about 500 different artists that I'd love to work with. It's like the coolest part of my whole job.
Wow.
Like honestly, it really is. Sitting there like telling someone else how to draw the dragon is
And Grifkin wants to know, oddest choice for you to co-author a book with, or
It would be the oddest choice for you to co-author a book with. Rebecca Yaros. I know that might seem like because of dragons and stuff, but the type of writing is very much not the same.
Yeah, but you do have that in common, the dragons, I understand. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think the difference comes in problem solving. Okay, I believe in her series, you can, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, in general, just fuck your way out of the problem.
Yeah. I haven't read it. Told. I can't confirm. I cannot confirm.
If there's an issue happening, you can probably sex your way out of it. That's the general idea.
We got to read these.
Yeah, we'll have to confirm that later. Finally, we've got the Patty P33. Which minor character would you like to write another book from? So one of the novellas or something like that, perhaps, is what we're.
Oh God, so many.
So many good choices. Many. Yeah.
So many. Like I've announced small things. Like I do plan on doing. I want to do like a Dane and Belina Jack Reacher style serialized, like serial. Like I'd love to do it like 80 to 100,000 words in the years between the exile and when we see them, and all the different things they did, And I have slowly, and I've done it in Vampires in Dust as well, I've slowly left hints as to some of the places they've been and things they've seen, and I would love to do that. And then I also would love to do, and I've said I'm going to do like a Chainbreaker saga where I go back to Vars and Theron and what happened during the Varsund War, and because I think there's a trilogy in there, a smaller trilogy, like, you know, a more compact, like 150,000 word books. Was something that I'd like to do, something that wouldn't kill me workload wise, that I would like to explore because it's fun. I'm always conscious of over explaining, and also just over exposing. People are like, oh, you're going to go back and do the Doom and do this and do that. And I think I realized this year when I was at Dragon Con, or last year at Dragon Con, and they were doing a panel on Tolkien, and I had a whole panel on Tom Bombadil at one stage.
Wow.
And I think what made me realize something is that the longevity and the love and the immortality of these things, the reason for them is actually, in my opinion, what's missing from a lot of modern fantasy, and it's the unknown. The things, all of the panels you'll see, all the debates you have are about the unanswered mysteries. They're about the stuff you don't know. And I think, like, Sanderson is so good at what he does with his hard magic systems and his really explained worlds that we've created this trend where people are trying to tell you every detail at all times. And TV companies are doing everything they can to make as much money as they can. So if they can go back and show you another story that was never told in a series, they will do it. And so we're kind of seeing everything at all times, but it leaves no room for your imagination to work. That's what was always fun for me, talking to friends about books, is our imaginations. What happened? What happened back then? How does this work? And if I answer it, you can't have that conversation anymore because I just told you.
Yeah.
So there's certain stuff that I do want to do and go back and see and explore. And I want to go back to like 3,000 years and explore the Druids arriving and loads of stuff like that, but leave huge gaps as well.
Nice. All right. Well, I want to get to Benjamin's comment later, but I want to give John a chance. John, you've probably thought of a question or made a comment at this point.
You know what?
Time to shine, John.
I've been thinking of a couple here as you go, Ryan. And you know what? I have one that has really intrigued me. You know, Dr. Chase and I said from the very beginning, when we very first started reading this series, it's like, this is a natural born storyteller. He can just spin a yarn. He you know, as the series goes on, as you've said, you've sharpened your tools.
My parents would say shit talker.
That's it. That's what I was going to ask. Where does it come from? Do you come from a family of storytellers? You kind of alluded to a little bit how you and your friends would talk about books and use your imagination. Like, where's the birth point of that for you, do you think?
It's a weird one. Like, I honestly, it's probably one of the nicest compliments from me that I can receive, is someone saying that you're a good storyteller. Like, good writing is so subjective, like so subjective. There are a lot of people who will say that I'm just a dog shit writer because I don't write the same way Stephen Erickson writes. Okay. And that's just the truth of it. And I go, do you know what? That's fine. You know, it's okay. Top 10, what? Exactly. This is how I feel. But that's it. Like, I think for me, there's a difference in writing and storytelling, and I'm trying to improve my craft of writing all the time. But someone considering me a good storyteller is really important, because at the end of the day, that's the essence of what I'm doing. But I don't feel like it comes from anywhere. I do. Like, my dad is just as bad as me. Like, he used to, when we were kids, every story he'd read, he would put on a different voice for every character. He would like make hand gestures, and like, I really, really, really credit my parents. I say mostly my dad, because my mom is dyslexic, and when Harry Potter first came out, she was so bad with Dumbledore and Hermione that we have a really like famous story in our family where I just took the book from her and goes, no, I read now. Because it was taking so long to get from page to page. God love her, she loves it. But she always struggled with reading. But my dad would put so much heart into it, that it made a big thing for me. And I suppose, like, I grew up with that oral storytelling. Like, my dad would read the books to me, And he'd like really read them, not just like, I want to read them because this kid needs to get to sleep and the routine we've developed is that I must read 6 pages. Like he'd get into it. And I think that made a big difference as I got older and grew up. Like I had no thoughts of writing a book in my entire life. I was like
Really
28 or something, and I was sitting there and COVID and stuff hit. And actually, it was just before COVID hit. I was in this job, and this is like, again, long answer, but I was in this job and they'd hired me, and I was the first microbiologist for the company worldwide, because they're a pharmaceutical company and they focus mostly on small molecule chemistry. And I'd just come in and they'd no work for me, but they were building their new plant and they wanted me in. So I was sitting there. I watched like every season of The Last Kingdom, like on Netflix. Like I was emailing and being like, can you give me work? Can you do something? Like, no, we don't have anything for you. We just needed you. So you weren't like on a different contract somewhere. And I was like, this is genuinely fucking depressing. And I said, you know what? Fuck this shit. I don't know if we can curse on this because I curse as a general part of my human being.
You just did. So.
I think you answered that question.
Yeah, like
I think that was the first one, though. So.
Like, yeah, you see, no, that wasn't. It definitely wasn't. But sometimes I can feel myself. I'm like, you know, when I get like passionate about something, like I think it's the Irish Scottish trait. But I was like, you know what? Like, screw this. I'm gonna write the book that like I've always grown up reading these things and loving these worlds and loving fantasy, and I've always wanted to, but I never did. And so I've had this kind of thought in my head for a while, and I said, I'm just gonna do it. And then my whole world just went upside down.
I do want to echo Benjamin Miller here with the congrats on the publication deal with the broken binding. That is so awesome. He also wants more VARs, and I can agree with that as well. Also related is, what can readers expect from the trad published re-release of A Blood and Fire? So how much can you say about that, Ryan?
Yeah, like it's A Blood and Fire. Like the story is the same. We'll probably do a cleanup for some like maybe grammar and like a proofread, but the structure of the story is not going to change. Like it couldn't, even if I wanted it to, just because the series is already much further along. But also because, and I've talked to Broken Binding about this, it's a hard decision because, like, look, the Blood and Fire is clearly my weakest book. Of course it is. It should be. It's when I was at my weakest as a writer. I feel like I did exactly what I had set out to do with it. Like, I wanted to create an opening point, an entry point for adults in fantasy who didn't get into it necessarily when they were younger, but can capture the same sense of awe that I got when I read them when I was younger, but as an adult. And then so readers who had already been in fantasy could find home, and they could find a place of classic fantasy with a more modern take, with the warm feeling they remembered. And then I can take them on the journey. I wanted to create an entry point that was accessible. And I think that made a big thing for me with like fans of like Fourth Wing and stuff. Like when they came in, there may be a lot of romance readers, and they came in and they read the crossover with romance and fantasy. And then they realized that actually, you know, I do love the romance, but I love the dragons and the swords and all the other stuff. And they found a good entry point instead of being just smashed in the face with this heavy, intense, crazy stuff. So you're going to get the basic story with a very, very, very nice cover, like really nice. It was done by Tom Roberts, who's done Mark Lawrence's books and Godkiller by Hannah Kaner and stuff. And I've done the art direction for them. And I have the first 3 already, and they're beautiful. They're going to be gorgeous. And then I think the first edition hardbacks, every first edition hardback is going to have acid-free paper, sewn binding, foiling, embossing, debossing. Like, it's going to be, they're beautiful.
Wow.
As you go off first edition, the acid-free paper and sewn binding and stuff will drop off. But we wanted to make as well that first edition actually means something, and not just that it was the first print. Like, you came in, you got this series from the start, you supported it, so I want you to be rewarded. That kind of thing.
Fantastic. And I just want to say of Blood and Fire, I really enjoyed that book, and I love it when an author in this genre is open about the fact that they love the genre, you know?
Yeah.
That is something to celebrate. I love
I literally just wrote the story that I knew I would love to read.
Yeah.
And I always find it real funny sometimes. Like, I completely understand why some people don't like it or even hate it. Like, where they go, oh, it's too derivative. I was like, that's fine. I wasn't aiming to not be derivative. I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. I was trying to write an epic fantasy, and like I'll have some people go, "Oh, you ripped off Tolkien here," and I was like, "Oh, where did I rip them off?" And they're like, "You see this mountain pass? You see when they went over the mountain pass?" I was like, did you just copyright mountains?" And and sometimes you'll see loads of stuff like, "Oh, this is just a blend of," and it'll name like 12 series. Like, tell me one story that doesn't have aspects from the foundational series that you read as an author. The difference is, and I find this, the difference is the same as it is with a woodworker. All right. The same things are there. Okay. So the reason I'm making this comparison is that the same things are there. Me and Stephen Erickson. All right. Obviously, Stephen Erickson stuff, a lot of it will come from like Dungeons and Dragons and loads of other things. There's inspiration from everywhere. Okay. But he is much better because he's a more practiced author at his craft. He's much better at not hiding them, but cloaking them in his way of doing it.
Yes.
Okay. And as I move on, and as every author moves on, you get better at that. In the same way that the only difference between an amateur woodworker and a professional woodworker is how they hide their mistakes. And so, like, as you get better at it, it's about how you seamlessly blend those inspirations into your world. And so, like, in A Blood and Fire, I wasn't as practiced at it. And as you move forward, I hope I get better at it. And so, yeah.
So Benjamin also asks if you're now that you've got this big, huge accomplishment under your belt, is it time for a little break, a little reading time, maybe? Anything you're looking forward to reading?
Yeah, like I think my concept of a break is very different than other people's concepts of a break. But I also love what I do. So like I can't take a break. Like I'm not gonna actually stop. Like I'll stop writing for a little bit, just for a short period of time, because I'd like to play PlayStation. Like I'd like to just relax, do something. Like I haven't played anything in ages, and I think I played Helldivers with Phil Quintrell there 3 days ago. I took one evening off, and it was amazing. I haven't touched the PlayStation. Space Marine 2 came out, and I played the PlayStation like straight and just finished the game, and then I was gone, and I was back into work. And I hadn't touched it for about 8 months before that. I don't think I'd done a single thing that wasn't like structured, necessary activity for like a year. So yeah, I'm going to be stepping away from writing a little bit just for like a few weeks, like maximum a few weeks. And even then I'm probably still going to be sitting outside thinking of what I'm going to do for the next story, the next novella. And, you know, but I have loads of books that I do want to read because my reading's been atrocious, like atrocious. I used to read maybe 30, 40 books a year. I probably read about 3 now.
Wow.
Well, it's really hard. Like a lot of the time, like I'll read a book and even if I'm loving it, like Words of Radiance. And this is the funny one as well. When you talk about comparisons, everyone said to me, "Oh, your stuff it's Shard Plate and Shard Blade." And I was like, I haven't read Way of Kings. So I read it last year. And I'm like 200 pages into Words of Radiance and I'm really liking Words of Radiance, but I can't continue because my brain won't let me. My brain's just like, why are you reading someone else's book when you could be writing your own?
Yeah. Quick question from Joe. When will book 4 be available on Audible?
So what I'm hearing is September, because the hard part about this is they need to wait until I have the proofread manuscript, okay, before they start, because obviously they can't record without the manuscript. So they have to wait for the proofread manuscript, but then they have to book the narrator in. This is a big audiobook.
Yeah, it's a big book.
We had a whole meeting where they wanted to convince me to split the book. And I was like, I can tell you 2 things. If you split the book and charge full price for both, you will be lambasted everywhere for just trying to squeeze money out of people. Secondly, this book is written with a crafted intent, and you will destroy not the catharsis, but the emotional moments at the end if you split the book, because you won't get those emotional moments at that first split point. So you'll destroy the reader experience. So which means you have to record it all together. I cannot even begin to explain how difficult it is to book a narrator in for one solid block. Because if you have like 44 finished hours or 45 finished hours in an audiobook, depending on the narrator, that could be 160, 250, 300 hours in a booth. It could be less. I'm not a narrator, but there's some people who spend a very long time to get those. Like the amount of recording hours to equal one finished hour varies wildly, but it could be a lot. So you're sitting there going, hey, I want you to just sit here for like a month straight in this booth and just this. And it's hard. It's hard to book the narrator in for that long a stretch. So September is the goal. I think they have everything booked in. I'd like to get it sooner, but if I were to have them release at the same time, all it would mean is that the ebook readers are just going to have to wait for no reason. And that's the hard part with it. The only reason it works in trad is because the wheels are so slow in turning that they're not going to release that ebook anyway. The book could be written a year beforehand, finished a year beforehand, but because of their publishing schedule, they can't have their two literary titans clashing in the same year. So they will move them out, and that lends to having all the formats ready. But
I want to
again,
get to Leslie's.
I can't give a short answer.
No, you can't. It's okay.
No.
I realized that when will book 4 be available on Audible? That was not a short answer, but it was a good answer.
No.
So,
yeah.
I do want to get to Leslie's question.
Short books.
Yeah. Look at the books, people. Yeah.
Actually, I've written short ones.
Yes, you have. I mean, yeah, these are short.
Yes,
so you can. So I do want to get to Leslie's question, and then we'll have Christopher.
You're a fantastic
ask a
moderator.
question again. Have your parents read The Bound and the Broken, Ryan?
They have, yeah. Yeah, my dad's a huge reader, and he's read it, and he tries to read it straight away. He would be when the book first launched, he would have bought like 30 copies. He would have been my main sale. Like he would have went out and bought them all, just kept them in a warehouse somewhere. He was going around the school he was working in, trying to get people to buy the book, like everything. My mom, so like I specifically signed an audio deal just because I wanted my mom to be able to read the series, because she doesn't read with the dyslexia as well. It's quite difficult. So I wanted the accessibility for her to be able to actually listen to the series. It took a long time for her to even do it after then, but she has started listening to it. And my brother, who doesn't read as well, he's destroying them now. He picked up the audiobook one day, and he wasn't reading them because he doesn't read, and he doesn't like reading. And he just picked up the audiobook one day, and he was like, so I have finished the series, and I would like to know when the next one is. I was like, what?
Now, do you give him spoilers? Does he have an in? Does he get? Did you tell him what's going to happen? Or
it didn't. It's funny because when he was doing the art for the first ones, he didn't care. All right, but I'm giving him some icons, because one thing I do in the storytelling, and I think it's good to pay attention to it, and especially in book 4, is I tell a mini meta story with the icons. So the icons change as the characters change. And so Aaron does the character icons. And so when I was giving them for book 4, I was like, oh, so because normally you inform an artist as to like the intent and the heart behind what you're doing, so they can get an idea of how they should draw it. And I was like, oh, this happened because, oh, actually can't tell you. He's like, Ryan, how am I meant to do the art if I don't know? It's like, but also don't tell me. I was like, this is a complicated situation, Aaron.
So, Christopher, what would you like to ask or comment on at this point, if you have anything?
No, I am curious, and I'm going to throw you way into your future here for you. Do you have other stories in mind? Do you have something maybe outside the Bound and the Broken that you are kind of maybe in the back of your head, but you're like, I got to focus on this one series first, but maybe I'll approach this,
It's hard because I don't know if it comes from being an indie author, and I've talked to Philip Quinchell about this as well, and it can be the difference between like your intent behind stuff. There's some trad authors who kind of go, I'm just going to go where the wind takes me. I'm going to write the series that my heart wants each time, flipping between left and right. And I think and there's nothing wrong with that. That's incredible. But the way my brain works, I sit there and go, I want this to be the job that I do until I'm dead. And to do that, I need to feed my family. And so I will sit there and I go, okay, yeah, there's other series that I want to write, and I'm going to write them. But right now I have a series that is doing extremely well, and I have a readership that is really enjoying it, and they're very dedicated, passionate readership. And so I want to make sure that I reward them for all the support that they've given me. So I want to write this series, and I'm not touching anything until this series is done and it is out there. It is being finished. Like I said, I've written this entire series with a year to spare in between book 4 and book 5 of the Stormlight Archive, which was crazy when we said that out loud before. And I was talking to someone, I was like, how is that even possible? So there's some, I wanted to write I really like the concept of like a horror fantasy crossover, and I really like I've always loved space opera. So between like meeting Christopher Rocchio and reading some of the books, some of Empire in Silence, and Star Wars, like and Dune, like that crossover of sci fantasy is just something that just speaks to my heart in the same way that like Wheel of Time does with normal fantasy. Like I have lightsabers like in this series, and that was actually, it's real funny. I was always worried about people saying, "Oh God, they're just lightsabers," and then people started saying, "Oh, they're just shard blades." I was like, "What the fuck's a shard blade?" And it took me a while to I was so worried. They'd be like, "You just stole lightsabers," and literally nobody made the comments. Like, how is that possible?
Wow.
So yeah, there's some other stuff I want to do, but I'm gonna focus on some Band of the Broken stuff as well, and some other series in the Band of the Broken. Not just, I know they're all technically spin-offs, but stories that completely stand on their own, in the world. But yeah.
So you just kind of answered Barry's question as well there, which is about the novellas in between the main books and the novels in the future spin-off series. So yeah.
See, it's hard because I might not be doing the novellas in between them. I think the novella structure was just something that I wanted for this, because the books are big enough. Okay, I can't go and take a 55,000 word novella and stick it in the book. And also it helps me, that need to go on side quests that ends up with like the storylines that everyone hates in a book. Like, there's a storyline, there's going to be a storyline in every book that someone hates. Like Wheel of Time had so many random side quests that I despised, despite loving the series. So it's kind of like, how about I take some of these really big moments that I think have an impact on the series as a whole and on the characters, and I give them their own stories. And it allows me to not meander so much. Because I feel that despite how large A War and Ruin is, that I don't actually meander a lot. Like I do, they stop and have a coffee on the way, but they tend not to go too crazy left and right.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. You're getting some great compliments here. You've also got Joe here saying, "Don't do it. Nobody reads science fantasy."
No, nobody reads superhero science fantasy, Joe. You got to be careful.
Right. A couple of really great questions here. Tiana T wants to know, what's your favorite character to write so far, or do you have one? Is that like picking your favorite child?
It's weird because, like, honestly, yeah, it's hard because I have moments. Sorry, I saw Joe comment. I have moments where each character, like patches of time, where each character is that way. Like Cahill, for instance. Not as much when I'm writing some of them, but as I get into the fourth book, it becomes more so because, like, Cahill, for me, I've always kind of disliked the fact that these young male characters in these things start out as an 18-year-old who basically has the mentality and ability to deal with issues that a 35-year-old war veteran has. And I've never liked it. And I still love the characters. Like I look at Rand and I'm like, Rand al'Thor, fucking cool ass character. Yeah. But at the same time, I wanted to create a character that was actually the character that they are and has to become the hero. Legitimately become the hero. Have the flaws that are going to make you go, "Oh, he's such a teenage boy." Because he is.
Yeah.
He is a teenage boy. I'm forced to become a man. And that takes time. And so as I'm putting those things in, and I personally feel the satisfaction is the thing that makes me love writing a character a lot. So like when you get to the end of book 4 and see where characters are, that's really satisfying for me when I'm writing. And then the other aspect is writing characters like Dan and Belina. And Dane is such a strong narrative voice in who he is that writing that is almost effortless because I always know what Dane's going to do. Like I know what his priority is in every single situation because it's such a strong narrative voice, and that is really fun. It's really fun to write an extremely competent, extremely like a high agency character. I find those to be really, really fun. But obviously, if you have every single character doing that at all times, you have no dynamics in your cast. But it shifts. But yeah.
I do want to give John one more shot at a non-spoiler question or comment. And before we move into spoilers, so this is a sort of a pre-warning for spoilers for the entire series, really, but we'll be focusing on Of War and Ruin and The Ice. We won't be able to talk a ton about them because, well, it's a humongous book, but we'll talk about some favorite moments, some characters, that sort of thing. But John, you get the last non-spoiler question.
All right. So you mentioned it a little bit, Ryan.
What's your favorite watermelon?
Yeah, seedless or I'm gonna delve really deep here. So you did say, hey, book one is my worst books, has to be, and you try to sharpen those tools book to book to book. Do you go in with like an idea, like this one I'm gonna work on narrative voice, this one I'm going to work on pace, this one I'm going to try a little bit of a different style because of locale to bring a different atmosphere than I've done before? Do you have like a marching order or some box to ticks before you go in? These is the high points I want to hit, what I want to work on.
So there's like yes and no. So like I also just write, but then like I said with the fall, like I had a very clear intent. I wanted to make my work and narrative voice stronger. Okay, it's something that I've done the whole time with the Darkness and Light. One of the key things that I wanted to be able to do was I wanted to be able to learn how to develop those bonds naturally between characters, and I also wanted to get much better and punchier with pacing. And then with Of War and Ruin, I wanted to learn how to take the two aspects that I had then and blend them. So I wanted to get the punchier pacing, and I wanted to learn how to find the moments to slow down, where those moments come in the best, because you can do them and they'll work, but where it really matters. And like there's some things as well that you'll find, and like in Vampires in Dust, and it's no spoiler or anything, in Vampires in Dust and with the War and Ruin as well, there'll be some points where maybe I'll focus on a character that you don't expect me to focus on. Okay, like it might not be the logical choice, but that's because of something that's coming later. And learning to build those emotions has been something that I've constantly been trying to do, and it's something that I honestly think it's a gift. It's a gift that readers give an author, and it's their trust. And someone coming into Vampires in Dust, in particular, and Of War and Ruin, because of how long the book is, I am relying on you to trust me. This is a big book, and I'm going to do what I can to give you the story that you deserve. And I'm relying on you to trust me that I know what I'm doing. And I had to build that in Of Darkness and Light and practice it even more in Of War and Ruin. And then writing a book as long as I did for Vampires in Dust, it was a case of, I'm not writing this book to be long. I don't want a long book. This has like 22 points of view. I'd say maybe like 14 or 4, like only a little bit more than Of War and Ruin for like major points of view, for like recurring solid points of view. But I do have recurring minor ones that will come through, like you see in Of War and Ruin, like Tarman and Veril, and like Erdheart comes into it as well. And like even that one, Erdheart's story, like in Of War and Ruin, we're not in the spoiler or anything, so I'm not going to say anything, but it's just the fact that he even exists as a point of view, the fact that he's even there. They were the kind of things that I wanted to work on in Of War and Ruin, was deepening the world in a textured way, not just the iceberg method. Like actually going and showing you these are characters who are alive in this world in different places, who are suffering from the consequences and ramifications of everything else that's happening. And that deepening and complexity was something I really wanted to focus on with War and Ruin. So I learn stuff that I don't expect to learn, but also I try and focus on stuff that I know I want to get better at.
God, I love that answer, because as we've gone through and charted these like together as a group, I just think you're a gifted, blessed storyteller. You're that guy. When I was a kid and we'd be around a campfire and everyone would go to bed later than they should have, because no one's going to leave. We're just going to listen to you. That's just what you've got, just the way you are. And then by the time we get to Of War and Ruin, it's like there's these really emotional moments that we slow down and get. And when we talk about our favorite moments, these are all of mine are going to be those emotional high points, those cathartic moments when we have the two characters together in a room, just taking the time to talk for a second. It's just beautiful. And you've grown to that point as a storyteller where it's like you can slow down and still command everyone's attention.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the key pieces of craft that's really hard to get.
Yes.
So I tried to work on it, is that ability that ability to allow basic moments to be the fulcrum that conflict can turn on, and not just like very overt, obvious conflict, like you know, war and fighting and stuff.
Well, you've got pace, and like I said when we reread, like things happen in this series. Like from book one, stuff happens. Like so much happens. You go outside and you expect your car to be dented. Like there's stuff going on.
I'm waiting for you to review a book, right? That you think is like a 1 star, and the only review just says stuff doesn't happen.
That could be, believe me, that could be. But for that moment where these characters get under our skin and we start to put our feet in their shoes and go on these journeys with them, it's those emotional moments when these things happen, it hits us as well because we're in those shoes so firmly. And I think that's where you've grown so much as an artist and a storyteller. And one of the most amazing things for me with this series, and I've talked about it as we've got together, is to chart your journey, not only the journey of your characters. So that answer was really brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, it is time to get into spoilers. So if you are someone who is here to just check out our discussion out of the kindness of your heart or out of interest in this tremendous series, and I think we all would endorse it enthusiastically at this point, jump on board. And we're all really excited for this release of Empires and Dust. But, there's a lot of great storytelling that happens up to this point. So go and check out The Bound and the Broken. But this is it. This is your warning for full-on spoilers. And so people in the comments as well, if you want to ask totally spoiler-oriented questions now, we'll try to get to those. But I'm going to selfishly start with my own, actually, moment, favorite
before
moment.
You do,
yes.
Before you do, I just wanted to really quick, just to say, like, thank you, because you have no idea how nice it is to actually be doing a talk where we talk properly about the books. I was talking to someone a while ago, and one of the consequences of being successful as an indie author means that you get pigeonholed into loads of videos about indie publishing, which I love, but it always ends up being about publishing and about like being independent, how to do it. So I think it almost feels like a marker in my short career so far to actually have people who want to talk about the books. That feels like a strange thing to say.
That's what we do here.
It's cool.
That is what we do around here. That is what we love. So, and there's just so much to get into.
Yeah.
And guys, we're just not going to get into everything, but I'm going to throw out my first favorite moment, and then I'm going to hand it over to my wonderful friends. But there's so many great mentors that, spoilers, guys. So this is it. So many great mentors.
Like that guy who dies.
Yeah. Trying to be, get people fully warned here. But no, I love how you have Kaylin meet various mentors along the way. And they're from, just the initial ones, like Theron, for example, is a wonderful one. And of course, Aeson is a huge one, as complex. And by the way, congratulations on just making his character come so alive for me in the ice. Just so brilliantly done. And now Aeson is just like, it feels like what happened with Roland in Wizard and Glass. That's the book where I felt like Roland became a human for me. This is with the book where you made Aeson become a human for me, and just in a beautiful way.
The thing with the novellas is, by the time you get to the end of the book that precedes the novella, if I've done my job right, that novella should be exactly what you want and what you need. So Aeson makes a lot of questionable choices towards the end, morality-wise, and so the character I want people to want to know more about afterwards is him. So that was like the natural progression. Same with Dane of the Exile. Dane comes out of nowhere. He has a rich history. What's going on? I want you at the end of Darkness and Light to be asking, where did Dane come from? Yeah. And then I give it to you. And so, like, I've been wanting to write the ice for a while.
It was just so well done. But where I'm going with this is also big shout out to Tarman. I love Tarman. He's like a moral compass for Kaylin, and I love that role that he plays again and again. He's the one who pulls him back and says, hey, these are human beings here. They're not just the enemy,
When I write Tarman, I have one thought in my head. Kaylin and Tarman is what would happen if Qui-Gon Jinn didn't die.
Ooh. Yeah.
And that's how I viewed that the whole time. I had an epiphany moment when I was writing, and where I killed Tarman in a draft. I killed him going across the burnt lands, and then I sat there for a minute, and I said,
Yeah, not yet.
no, based on the logic that's happened, without him, Caelan will make choices later on that I don't want him to make as a human being.
Yeah.
And it will change the story, and that's okay if that's the way I want the story to go, but it's not. And I need Tarman to be that for him, and to create that foil to Daemon, who is also a young man who loses his family, thrust into power he wasn't prepared for, but has no support system. And it changed, and that's the Tarman's a really important character for me. And I had that moment where I was writing the first draft or zero draft, and I went, yeah, that's what this is. He is the Qui-Gon Jinn in this. Kanan will go full Vader, like,
Wow.
especially as he's learning to navigate what's going on in the world and everything he's lost.
Yeah. I love that. I really love it. But my favorite mentor moment. Okay, I had a couple, but it was the meeting with Pelennor was awesome. By the way, when they're down in the dungeons, but my favorite mentor moment actually was Tivar, when Caelan met with Tivar in the temple on how do you say Drak-Aldr? How do you say
Drak-Aldr?
Okay, that was really cool. I loved what you did there because you succeeded really brilliantly in humanizing the Dragon Guard. I've already seen Eltuar. I've seen that he's kind of torn about what he's done. There's some guilt there, and I've met Pelennor, who's obviously had second thoughts and is actively working to help Caelan. And then you meet Tivar and her dragon on this island, and you see the trauma of not only losing friends, but the trauma of living with what she's done, and finally just saying no more. I can't do this anymore, and then making the decision in the end when it's breaking her heart to help Caelan in the final battle in this book. So really well done. I have to say this is and it's a quiet moment between Caelan and Tivar. One of my standout moments in the whole book.
It's such a nice thing for me. I actually have a few goosebumps because, like I said, with the War and Ruin and the way I had to move into the next stuff, I didn't actually get to talk about the book a lot with people. And that for me was a really big moment because that is the first mentor or authority figure that Caelan meets who is truly honest with him in all aspects.
Yep.
And so that was kind of the big thing for me, and the big thing moving forward to see with Caelan and with the choices that get made is honesty. Because a lot of people are honest, but they're honest in their own head about what they need to happen and why they need it to happen. But she is just open. She tells him both sides of it, whether it hurts her argument or not. And I think that was a moment for me that I loved writing. So it's always really nice that it happened, and it's also a moment that I had considered cutting from that book.
Wow.
Oh man.
The only reason was, and because it's also a moment that a lot of people give Caelan flack for, because Caelan leaves.
Yeah.
He has to leave for that moment to happen. But also in my head, it makes sense that he leaves because Caelan has just faced a massive honesty betrayal on a topic that he's already deeply questioning. When he's trapped in the cell in Arisfall, and Arden Baldock says to him, like, these aren't your friends. They just want you for what you can give them. And he has nothing to do with the Dragon Guard, but he talks about the Dragon Guard being his real kin. And it's that question that's been planted in Caelan's mind. And then that moment is Aeson confirming that the question has legitimacy. And that's him so angry that he doesn't know what to do. He knows his own anger and his own rage, and he knows that Valeris, the rage of a dragon, has made it worse. And he knows at that point that he needs to go. And I considered cutting it because I was questioning, did it kill the pacing of the ending? As you're building to this crescendo, am I doing this? And dropping it to build it back up again. And so I actually have my two drafts on Scrivener are Tivar and no Tivar.
Wow.
They're the two drafts. And as I went back through it, the moment was too important for me about the decisions that he makes at the end of that book.
Yeah.
The choice that he makes, the choice that really turns Aeson and turns the other people into going, this isn't just a boy anymore.
Yeah.
Like, the choices that he makes are completely informed by the things that Tivar says to him.
I would compare it to Rand al'Thor's Dragon Mount moment in the Wheel of Time. Like, it's that iconic. It's that important a moment. So I feel like wow. I'm so glad you kept it because it's a real standout for me. And character building. And it is Kaelin's moment of conscious maturation. Really important.
It's the first point in the story where he takes full agency.
Yeah.
It's the first point where he is completely in control of his own story.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's part of what I was saying before, like before we're on spoilers, is I really wanted Caelan. I could have turned Caelan's likability up to 10 from A Blood and Fire. I could have turned his capabilities up to 10. I could have turned his agency up to 10. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to build that character. And I wanted to see those moments happen. I wanted to watch him change while we have more complete characters around him. And it's why, like in the Born Ruin and the Darkness of Night, you have like points of view that are more ready-made. Dane's point of view is more ready-made, straight away. And it's something that for me I wanted to do. I wanted to have different dynamics in how these characters are building. And like that moment for me was a huge moment when I was writing it. For Caelan, in that like this is the point where I want him to start becoming the character that I've always intended him to be.
So brilliant. It's a favorite for me. I just want to interrupt. Chris, you're going to be up next, okay? For one of your favorite iconic moments here. But I do want to acknowledge Mike here, our friend. We
still love you, Mike.
Yeah, we wishing you well.
Wish you well, buddy.
We definitely still love you. And Mike's just here to say, gentlemen, sorry I had to call in sick. Wanted to congratulate Ryan on finishing book 4 without a gray hair in sight. Is that true?
I definitely have them, but I think they were there beforehand.
Okay.
I have to, like, it is. It again, that's another whole like YouTube video you could have on the level of stress and work and balance and I've never experienced anything like it in my life. Favorite job in the world, but I've also never experienced what a panic attack is until I went into publishing. So
when it's your bread and butter, and your family depends on it. I guess that would up the stakes somewhat, right? Yeah.
I think people always say there's the old adage that when you do what you love, you won't work a day in your life. I think that's completely and utterly untrue. You will work way harder than you've ever worked in your entire life. You will pile more stress on top of you than any human should. The only difference is you will be completely okay with it, and the thought of doing it with something else kills you.
Yeah. This is also a great moment. I just have to acknowledge that from Wolf Mantula. I think we can all agree that is super.
That
badass.
was literally a movie role in my head as I was doing that one. I was like, "This is a badass moment."
Dane taking down Yarsil and Hera and he summons that spear, and man, oh my goodness, that's great stuff. But Christopher, it's your turn, my buddy. So what's your moment you want to talk about with Ryan?
Yeah, I do want to really quick piggyback off of you, Philip, because it was kind of my point too on mentorship. And what I appreciate what you did was not just have one mentor kind of throughout the book. With what a lot of fantasy does is usually piggyback off that one mentor. And I like that you give our hero here multiple, mentors, and each of them provide different ways of learning for Caelan. And I think that was really cool to see. You don't see that often with multiple mentors. And I thought that was
as you were saying, I could
hear
my dog like barking at the neighbor's cat.
Oh yeah.
I was like, shut up, Athena.
I have a low voice, so it's really tough. But no, I like that you have multiple mentors for Caelan, and you see how they each can provide something different for Caelan to grow into what he's going to become for sure. So I appreciate.
It's always really nice. it's really nice to hear people point these things out, because they're the subtle parts of writing that you think most people won't notice, and they'll only they'll absorb it subconsciously, but not know why they like it. And so having someone say that is really nice, because it was a conscious choice in trying to reflect real life and in the relationships that we have with people, and even people in general, but also then as a mentor. Like for me, like I say to my wife, okay, we talk about like having friends, okay, and why having friends is so important, because your partner should never fill all of the roles that you need for friendship and companionship in your life, and they shouldn't be able to either. They aren't able to, and no one person can fill every single crack. And that's why, you know, I have a friend who I could talk writing with, or a friend who, you know, I love going and do active stuff with, and I do that with Amy too. But some of the things that I like, Amy's never going to play Helldivers with me. And you know, I think it's important that different relationships fill different things that you need, different facets of your life, but also as you grow up, I've always found it weird when I look back on how there's always only like a single mentor character in books, because I don't know any person who has only taken inspiration for the character that they are, and from one human being. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of people who have grown up and would attribute it to one human being, but that's not the reality. The reality is going to be, as you're a kid, simple acts of kindness by strangers, watching someone treat someone a certain way, and having it reinforced. So like if you're out there and someone is kind to a homeless person, and the person beside you goes, "What a douchebag," you might start to feel that way. But if the person beside you reinforces the behavior that you see, you start to see that in a positive light. And then there's other people who, despite the negative reinforcement, will still think it's a good thing. And it's about, you might learn that from your dad, and you might learn how to treat your mom from your dad, but then you'll learn from your mom how small things matter, and you'll learn from your friend the beauty of being there in a moment when someone needs you, and you learn all these small things from different people along the way. And so I kind of wanted to make sure, especially with Caelan's being a major point of view character in the series, that I showed that. I wanted to show him getting, you know, different things from Theron, different things from Aeson. He gets his, like, from Aeson, he's learning to be a warrior, not with his blades, but literally in his composure, in who he is. He's rallying against it like a teenager would against their dad, and he's looking and he's saying he doesn't like it, but he's subconsciously doing it himself with other people. And then he learns his morality from Tarman, and he learns a slow measure of kindness from Veyril, who isn't even a mentor character technically, but the way Veyril treats him reflects on how he treats others. And, you know, he learns from Haim, even when they're younger, how you stand up, like that you if something is wrong, you stand up for it. And he learns that from Haim. And it's those little things. And one of the things that people talk about as well, that I put in that I really like, is the way he treats, for instance, Dallin in book 1, right? He learns from his dad. So Varys is considered like a really well-respected, really strong of character guy. But if you see the way he treats Rhett in book 1, he's an honorable, stand-up person, but he struggles with loss and where to place blame. And that's a specific character flaw that I wanted to put in. He struggles with losing the things that he loves, and when he loses the things that he loves, he doesn't know how to deal with them. And he needs someone or something to blame to be able to grasp his loss. And Caelan does the exact same thing. Like, he treats Dallin as though Dallin has killed Rist, because otherwise he blames himself, and if he blames himself, he won't be able to function. And so on the surface, when you read that book the first time, you're probably going to think, here's a teenage asshole boy being a teenage asshole boy. And it's like, it is, but it's a specific character trait they learned from one of his mentors. And so it's just, they're the small things that I love writing. I'm sitting there going, oh man, I'm so clever. And like, no one's ever going to, like, you know, think on it. So it's nice when someone says that.
Gotta agree with this as a shocking moment with Cahill finding Risk's parents, and I have to think that that's going to come up later, probably during a certain confrontation, maybe.
Don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Also,
Nice try,
Grifkin is asking you to talk a little more softly, lest his wife starts to be all aflutter because of your accent. And I want to get to John in a moment here.
Take your time.
First, I thought that Benjamin Miller has some a great commentary along with his question here. Where does the inspiration come from when writing your dragon battles? Did Cahill have a moral hesitation before setting aflame the many Lorians in the last battle once the Dragon Guard were gone?
Yeah.
So great question, Benjamin.
Part of that is part of the answer that I would give for that is spoilers for book 4. But like, yes, and that's the thing. This is a fulcrum in Cahill's entire existence. And I think a lot of people maybe gloss over it when they read the end, and to truly what he did at the end. Like what he did at the end was make a conscious choice to burn thousands of people alive to save the people that he loves. And that's a choice that he will grapple with, and everyone will grapple with, and it's a choice that will fundamentally change him. Because now he knows what he's done. He's no longer better than Aeson. He's no longer better than anyone else. He has made this conscious moral choice to become that person. So that's a big one. And like for the dragon battles, I think. Sorry, I read a weird comment there. For
you mean the age gap one?
Or I don't know. I would be too quiet if I tried to read it again. But
okay.
Yeah, with the dragon battles, I wanted to come into it with the concept that, like with George R. R. Martin, when he writes these, which I really appreciate from his point of view, is these are nuclear missiles. This is not like two people having a punch up in a bar. These are weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
And when they come together, you will have death. Like these dragons aren't going to clash in the sky and everyone comes away okay. I needed it to feel consequential. Like when these dragons come together in the sky, all of them are not leaving. Like, and that needs to be like a thing in the series for me. There needs to be a cost. And it's also, it feels realistic to me. And it is something that like happens. They do it with the House of the Dragon as well, which I like. It's the concept of these dragons, yeah, they can win wars, but anyone who understands anything does not want them involved. Like, because once you do, the rules make no sense anymore. Like once they come in, you can just lose thousands of people in 5 seconds, hundreds of people in 5 seconds. These things are going to crash. When they hit the ground, everything beneath them is going to die. Like it's something that I really loved. And obviously as the series goes on, you're seeing more and more of that conflict style because it's not really in a Blood and Fire. And then in the Darkness and Light, it's kind of one-sided. And that's why they use them, because there's no answer to them. And then once there starts to become an answer, then choices have to be made. And that's especially when the people on both sides understand that with every one you kill, there's now one less of you.
Yep.
And you're your own species at that stage. And so, yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and this is a great point too about the fall. And I do actually think that there's lots to talk about with Elaine's point about Farda and Ella.
Well, there's no relationship, so there can't be any.
I mean, well, okay, so Farda clearly has very strong feelings about Ella, right? I mean, that is part of what, and honestly, he is, I think, one of your best characters, one of your most interesting characters in the deepness and the depth of his flaws. And he's one of those characters I find myself wanting to be redeemed somehow, but he's done stuff that can he even be redeemed? But he has this thing about Ella that is obviously, you know, it's not purely romantic by any means, but she seems to be bringing something up in him that existed before the fall. That was part. By all accounts, he actually was a pretty noble character before the fall.
By all accounts, before the fall, he was considered a paragon of what it is to be a Dralid.
So I think there's some actually interesting things to talk about there, perhaps. But
I'd say wait till we get to the. This is what I've loved is I've purposely created this where people are going to be guessing: is it a romantic relationship? Is it not a romantic relationship? What's going on? Again, we're saying before, questions are what drives the popularity of the series. Like people being able to talk about things, and leaving things vague is just as important as being explicit. I would say if we have this conversation after book 4, I think you'll be really interested to see where it goes.
I definitely will. But John, what are you thinking about, my friend?
Okay, I've been thinking about. I'm gonna kind of jump off of what both of you guys did when you talk about mentorship, because this is what hits me when I read these books, Ryan. I'm so excited to talk to you about this. The bound and the broken, this theme, and it's this long drawn out generational story. And what you're able to do with the fantasy setting of this is even extend that with these characters of Theron and Aeson and these Drelid that can live these extended lifetimes. Are they still bound to their soulmate in the dragon? Are they broken? Have they lost it? Do they carry guilt from that? Do they carry what the pain of what they've lost? And what does that do to a character over this extended period of time? And these slow moments you start to bring in, not only in this book, but in the book before, when we have moments of like just a slow, gentle character moment of Aeson and Theron coming together and holding each other and realizing what they've lost and what's still left to do and what makes them keep moving forward to do it and how they can't quite stop. I felt that was just an amazing masculine moment to have, for them to hold each other and to be able to talk to each other in that way, and a beautiful character moment, and just such an amazing thematic moment of this series of bound and broken characters in this long generational story of the cyclical fashion of empire and crumble over and over again. And it's those quiet moments that bring about the catharsis of this entire series. And I don't know if we're going to go back around again, but I have another moment that's kind of the same. But that moment just wrecked me. It just wrecked me because I got to see an older male figure, a paragon of masculinity and warrior, as you said, be able to have contact with his feelings and hold a friend close and talk about what they've lost and how they have to keep going even after what they've lost. And it's such a build in artistry from where you began to bring me that moment. That's what I mean about your journey itself, my friend, has just been a joy to watch.
It's like so far like everything you've said that's been nice. It's really lovely to hear, because I know people talk about like themes when you write, and it's a big question. And I got asked it before, is like, do you have a theme in mind before you write? And I'm usually of the opinion that unless your intent is the theme, so say for instance like Emma Wong's Blood Over Brighthaven, the theme is the point of the book. You are trying to say something explicitly, so the intent matters. But sometimes with fantasy, if you hone in on your theme too strongly before you write, you start painting it into everything, and it can be really, really not obtuse, but like it's there, it's hitting you on the head because you have purposely put it into the book everywhere. And I have found for me that I discovered afterwards that I had a theme, certain themes that ran through why I'm telling the story. And then in my editing, I'm able to kind of caress where they need to be. And I think one of the big things for me that it's been no secret is male mental health in particular. And I've lost friends. I've lost far too many friends for someone who's only just turned 33. And I think for me, I was raised in an environment where, being a man involves talking and, and being able to survive these things. And like, it's something that I've tried to write in, and with differences, and you'll see more of it as you go into book 4 and with the people of the Glade. And the people of the Glade, for me, their cultural background is Celtic Irish. That's why they use the words mom and dad. That's why the way they do things is slightly different sometimes. And why it can be insular, and why the concept of them just, you don't leave someone from the glade behind, is you, that's just how your culture is. And then the elders take responsibility for the people that the younger generation become. You know, it is your own respect is measured in what kind of human beings you're raising. And so for me, like as well, with when it goes to Aeson and it goes to Theron, and in that moment when I sat there and I said, okay, it's all in the air concepts. If you have someone who's 400, 500, 600 years old, despite the fact of the science behind the mental capacity to actually hold memories that long, like when you're sitting there and you go, how the hell do you survive 400 years of losing everything again and again and again? And part of the thing for me was in showing that they all deal with it differently. Yeah. Like you see where Eltuar is, you see where Tivar is, you see like Jorman and Ilkia and Selerain, and how it's saying that they dealt with it entirely differently, and they were consumed by it. Mm-hmm. Tivar was crushed by it. Eltuar bounced against it, like, and Laena found her ability to grapple onto reality by holding on to the people that she loves. And it's that kind of stuff. And with Aeson, there are certain characters where he'll have that vulnerability and others where he won't.
Oh, sure.
Theron has been there the entire journey. And so for me, it's the two of them have this mutual understanding that they cannot understand why they're alive. And they're finding that purpose and they're open with it. They've both seen each other at the worst points of their lives. And so for me, showing that, and even just from a personal perspective, just showing that, like, you know, talking helps is a major thing for me.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting to me because, as you said, that extended, how would you even holding that in your head when you get old man brain, or, you know, how do you deal with it? And it's a question, right? It's that pivot. You get crushed under the weight of it, or you find the light and the hope, and you find that grim heart that you were talking about a little bit earlier, I think, you know, and you either become a little bit more humane, or it crushes you and become a little bit less. And we have examinations of both types of characters in these Bound and Broken as we're going through the series. And it just, you know, that was my take, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it so much. It's something that, like, for me, looking at society at the minute, and it's something that resonates, and it's something that, like, I don't know, like, I don't want to get political on talks and stuff, but it's just seeing where, you know, where younger men in certain generations are going, and how the steps forward that we've made seem to be sliding back.
Yeah.
And it's that accountability for teaching the younger generation, you know, what it is to be a good person. You know, outside of everything else, outside of any of your other beliefs, be they religious or political or anything else, just being a decent human being, doing everything you can to make sure that other people's pain is minimized, is something for me that, like, I think it's just an inherent thing, and it's something that I've just realized that I start to explore in the series as I'm writing it. Like, you get that sense when you go back to edit, and you're like, oh wow, yeah, this theme is definitely here. Like, I want to make sure that it sings.
Yeah, I appreciate
it. That you get through really beautifully too. You mentioned all these different characters dealing with all this different trauma and dealing it with in their own different ways and being broken in different ways. And some of them are literally Rakina. I love the moral complexity in your series. A good character to, I think, home in on in that regard is Rist's journey, because Rist is basically, he's with the enemy. And of course, Ella calls him out on it in a big way. And yet he finds virtue in people like Garamon, for example, his mentor, another mentor figure in here. You know, he sees that these people are not just pure evil. And it's something that I like that you're doing here. And this is something that it appeared in previous books. You know, again, it was a Tarman moment when he told Kaelin, hey, yeah, these people may be Lorians, but they're human beings right now, and we need to save them. So I love that moral complexity in your series. And somehow it feels like a series where we're rooting for the good characters, but the good characters can be pretty flawed. And Aeson, he's like an Ahab figure. He's a Roland. He's an obsessed dude. He is seriously broken. He's got some.
That's the only way it can keep moving forward, though.
Yeah. I mean, the guy, I mean, what
that keeps him from becoming broken.
Yeah. I mean, he is just the sheer determination of that guy is astounding. But I just congratulations on that. The fact that you have achieved that moral complexity in this series is really fantastic. So
I really appreciate that. Like it's a big thing. It's an exploration on war and how you send soldiers to war. When you send soldiers to war, you have to tell them that the enemy is a monster because it's easier to kill a monster than it is a human.
Yeah,
sure.
And that's how we look at this. And people look at Lorians and go, "How could he be with the Lorians? Because they're evil, they're monsters." And go, "Someone on the other side trying to live their life." It's the people up there that are monsters, always telling us that everyone beside us is a monster.
Yep. Nick says it really well, I believe. I don't think the Lorians at that battle and their commander will forget what Cahill and Valeris did for them. Well said, Nick. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that may play, you don't know what the repercussions of those actions will be down the road. But the commander there did send him to the druid guy. What was the druid guy's name? I love that character.
Roka.
Yes. Roka. Yeah. I love
every time you speak words, I'm sitting there going, Bill's gonna like book 4.
Yeah. Good stuff.
As long as the things hit the way they're meant to hit, you will. If they don't, then you'll think it's crap. So
you're doing the eccentric characters really well, I have to say. So I do want to
write, actually.
Oh, I can believe it. I can believe it. A couple more great comments here. Here's Chris. Series has yet to disappoint in any way. So many characters, and they're all memorable. Well said. Absolutely.
Yeah. Chris.
I want to highlight Corey's comment here. As a veteran, I can attest our commanders must have never counted on us getting to know a different people. Yeah. Okay.
So,
That's and thank you for your service, Corey. Absolutely. I want to highlight this one here from Effa Pax. It's not one specific moment, but a recurring one. I love how your characters show the need for accountability. That isn't you sort of check yourself moments are really important. So really well said. But I do want to get at least one more round in for Christopher and for John before we.
Like I said, the baby's away. Like my wife she goes back later on. I'm free for the minute and I'm having a good time.
We're having a blast. We could do this all night, but
sure.
I do have to eat dinner at some point. But I want to get one more round in. I want to get one more round in for my friends. I mean, it would be.
You didn't eat before?
Yeah.
We told you to prep. You don't even have lighting.
I was reading the recap.
Look at John and Christopher's backgrounds. Look at.
I told you to bring a Cliff Bar. What's wrong with you?
No, I was reading the recap.
A Cliff Bar.
Ryan, it's your fault.
I bought electrolytes and a Cliff Bar.
It's your fault, Ryan.
That's all you need.
The recap is a novella, so.
It is.
Yeah.
So anyway,
novelette.
Let's get that right. It's only 10,000 words, so novelette.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
You can, however, add it to your books read for the year on Storygraph.
Okay, good to know.
Nice.
Good to know.
I genuinely feel like making a Goodreads post for it, like a Goodreads account recap for War and Ruin.
There we go. Thank you, Griffkin. Appreciate it. All right. Christopher, what would you like to bring up for your final spoiler-filled point that you'd like to talk about with Ryan?
It's not so much as well. I guess it is a spoiler, but and it will tie in a little bit with Ice. One of the things I appreciate a little bit is because as fantasy readers, we love character, of course, but we also love world building, and I love when you can take something from your world and make it alive and make it its own character. And for me, the Burntlands and that whole scenario with how it had affected our characters kind of affected me too, and how that was really affecting Kaylin and everybody else that was part of that journey across the Burntlands. And that's very similar to what happens with the Ice, only the conditions, of course, are a lot different. But for me, just the struggle with the environment playing a character role into that intermingled with the character's own psyche. I thought, that to me really hit me for some reason. Like I said, I like when you can take character and your story, your world, and combine that into like just an extra character to go along on the journey with you. So yeah, I mean, that to me hit me really, really good, not good, but because it was a terrible condition, but yeah, I love that. Yeah.
I genuinely love how these have gone from like not actually being questions, but just really nice things. That's not a criticism. This is a great start to my day. I'm going to skip out of this office. No, like that's it's again, we were talking earlier about like when John was asking about like intentional learning, like when you're trying to write, and it was that is one of the things that I've tried to practice from the start is trying to make everything do more than one thing. And create a texture to the world, because that's what real life is. You never experience one thing at a time. And funnily enough, part of the logic and thought process behind the Burnt Lands was Twitter, which never told anyone to, but it's the concept that when you're surrounded by the madness, it's hard not to let it overcome you. And like, even like, have you ever gotten to a point, like I have to, just because of, it's weird to say this sentence, but because of who I am, like on Twitter, I 99.9% of the time try not to get involved in anything, because there is no point in which it usually comes out positive for me at all, no matter what I do. But I really struggle with what's going on right now, and seeing so much shit be spread around and not saying something about it. It's really difficult, because like, if you're not coming from a platform, your voice doesn't have as much strength. But when it's a smaller platform compared to someone who's larger, you have a lot to lose very quickly. And it's the concept that just seeing all this rhetoric get thrown around and being like surrounded by it can drive you insane. Like, there's points where I've sat at this computer and actually had to stop writing because I took a break and I saw some stuff, and it got into my head so much that I had to stand up and leave the office, and I just go inside and pet my dog for like 20 minutes. And just because it's so fucking sad and shit to see the world like that. And for me, that was like a minor, like a contributor to when I was writing the Burnt Lands. And I was like, yeah, like no matter who you are, you put enough voices in your head at any moment with no ability to stop them, and you will become the person that you don't want to be. Yeah. Even if you're saying the thing that's true, like you'll say it in the wrong way, you'll do the wrong thing. And
Kaylin, what Eric says to Kaylin.
Yeah. I said, it's just very devastating, and just sometimes we lash out, at the people we are close to.
Yeah. And that was the big one for me. We were saying earlier about accountability with Eric. And he's like, we all say things we don't mean. Eric said, no, I did fucking mean it. Like, I'm sorry how I said it.
Yep.
But these are the things in my head, and I want to be honest with you because we're going across this place together. And that was a big thing for me, because there's a lot of people who would then just go, and it's the thing with Eric, and one of Eric's big character things is Eric is honest to a flaw, always. He doesn't have that trait that his dad has. He in the same way that some people, Kaylin saw his dad and absorbed his trait, Eric saw his dad and rejected his trait. So Eric is the exact opposite. And he doesn't get as much time as Dallin does, because he's not a point of view character or a prime point of view character. And that makes a different dynamic when you write the character. But like, that's one of his things, is he's seen what lies do.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are on our final talking point, and it is going to be John's.
Well,
John, what would you like to end our stream with?
I got 3 or 4 things. I was just thinking about the Burnt Lands, and then
I have one question.
And Ryan saying, how we say, well, they're not really human. That's why we can, send our soldiers to fight them. It's like the Burnt Lands are that physical manifestation from the cataclysm of us pushing the people apart, like actually schisming the countries apart. So it's like it's that beautiful thematic work again that maybe you didn't intend, maybe you did intend, but it spoke to me. I have one thing to say, and then I'm going to ask you a question at the end, and maybe you can't answer the question at the end because it's too much spoilery, but here's one of my other favorite moments is like when Risk has the moment with Fane Morton in the library.
Yeah.
Like, dude, what a scene.
Favorite scenes,
like,
right.
As an actor, I would hit my mom in the face to play that scene. Like, like the sophistry, this dude, he sits down with Wrist and lays it all out. And it's like, this is not a mustache twirling dude, man. It's like, this is, you know what? I'm buying this. This has got a beat I could dance to. Like, it's a great villain because not only is he doing what he thinks is the best, it's like he can almost through sophistry sell me on it. Like that was one of my favorite scenes through the whole book.
Never expected it. Yeah.
That was something I've been waiting for a really long time to write, because one thing I've always, when I read other stories, these big villains, and I'm like, how did they do it? Like, how did they convince everyone to do this shit? Like, because especially when you get a classic older fantasy where it's more black and white, and I'm just like, this is so clearly evil. Like, how did you make people do this? And like, when I was writing Fane, and I have him in there, I was like, this is one of the most intelligent human beings you have ever met. Not just on a book point of view, but on a social construct point of view. He prides himself on knowing exactly how everyone ticks. And it's one of the things I like to explore is how he will become a different person to different people.
Yeah. Oh,
and
100%.
It's like the narcissist trait, like that, the serial killer trait of being able to read what another person needs. And like he knows in that scene, and it's like I was saying, someone talking about before in a beta read, this is, again, it's not a question, but it's something I think you really appreciate. It's basically we're talking about my editor at the time brought it up, the way Fane seeks him out and how it seems, she's like, it all seems too orchestrated, like it's not natural, it doesn't flow. And I'm like, that is exactly
that's the point.
Yeah. So Fane knew.
He moved all the pieces.
He wanted to make sure Wrist knew that the suggestion was, how about Wrist stumbles across him here or there? I was like, no, it can't be by accident. No. He needs Wrist to know that he sought him out, which means he finds importance in him. He needs Wrist he knows Wrist strongly enough to know that how you win this guy is by letting him make his own choice. Yep. How you win this guy is by informing him. He can read Wrist and go, Wrist is someone who thinks and contemplates, and he's someone who absorbs information like a sponge. So do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give him all of the information, but I'm going to give it to him first. And it's finding what works. That approach would never have worked with Cahill, ever.
Oh, like, no, but he's going to do whatever he has to do to get that person to drink the Kool-Aid.
Someone's coming to our door, and my dog has turned into an air raid siren whenever someone comes to the door, and she literally will not stop.
It's okay.
Like, at all. It's insane.
It's perfectly fine.
Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah.
2 seconds.
Take your time. We're used to blabbing. So yeah, that's a great topic. And John,
that was good, John. I was thinking that same thing too. That was for sure.
You know what? While we have a break, I want to clarify. That's what a bunch of us would say around the theater back in the day. I would never hit my mom in the face like that.
We know.
Okay.
You're too sweet of a guy to hit.
I don't see that happening.
We did get Athena appearance, sort of.
Yeah, we did.
I guess.
All right. there she is.
Oh, yay. There's the baby.
All right. I got one last question before you can eat. I got one last question before you can eat, Dr. Chase. See if you can answer this.
There she goes.
This is going to shock no one that I asked this, because of what we just wrote and put out there. But I'm just going to skip to the end of this book where it's got this cosmic horror feel of using everyone as experimental fodder to open this door between one reality to the next. and I've read like some of the catchphrases of what's coming up, right? Are we going to get some God action? Are we going to get even more expanded powers and expanded lives and things like that coming our way?
Come on.
We got druids, we got gods, we've got.
Are we going to get gods? Are we getting gods through that door?
Yeah.
We got the warrior.
Answer is like quite explicitly a spoiler, but like, you know, there are things that are going to happen, and when those things happen, other things will happen, and some things will be larger than other things.
I love me. It's got that. You said you want that horror and fantasy. You're already there, man. It's got that cosmic horror vibe. I love it.
I wanted to find a way. Like there's certain things like that. Certain stuff that I won't do. So like, you know, I've said it before and other stuff. I don't put sexual assault in my books. It's not something I feel like I'm equipped to grapple with and treat with the right care and attention. And also I built a third world fantasy. I just don't want to put it in it. But with other stuff that is darker, that I feel could and would happen, you know, I feel like that should go in there. And it's also another part, like you see with Fane and with his expertise in manipulation, he has found the person who will do the dark things that even he doesn't really want to do. And so he can keep his accountability over here while this person does the thing he would have done anyway. And Fane just benefits from it. And but yeah, I think with the title for the 5th book being Of Gods and Ashes, I would say you are likely to see things happen.
But see, that's the one last thing. Like Fane, like what's pulling the strings there? Like that's the next.
The whole series for me became very concrete when I decided what Fane wanted. And so a lot of the time you have, again, archetypal classic fantasy, you will have the evil lord who's evil because evil is fun, right? And then you'll also have one sometimes where there's always this amazingly justifiable, noble reason. Okay, so I wanted to find a place that I was happy with. And when I decided why Fane was doing what he's doing, that concreted the whole series for me. And like it's pivotal. It's not just bad to be bad. The whole series is because of why he's doing what he's doing. And
we did just have a whole bunch of super powered scary dudes enter the world at the end of this book.
Yeah.
It is the challenge with these epics, like with the longer ones and stuff that I feel like, you know, Wheel of Time suffered with, and a lot of people agree. Like when it comes to the slog, right, and you have 14 books, is expanding series should almost always be dealing with increased escalation, scope, scale, and cost. And that's really hard to do across like 14 books, because how does it keep getting bigger unless the first battle is a 400,000 word book on someone trying to find a fork they lost? Like, because you have to start real small to build real big. So like stakes will rise. Things will get bigger. But I think the important thing for this series, for me, is while the overall plot stakes rise, the individual stakes need to be able to be grounded. Like, because that's the reality of it. Like, even in those moments where someone goes, "Do this, or the gods will kill us all," like, I'm gonna look after my wife. You know, and it's something that you grapple with. But yeah, I'm excited for this book to come out, and for a lot of the stuff we've talked about here, will get dealt with in book 4. Book 4 is where I start to answer questions, and I'll open new ones, you know. But book 4 is where we'll start to get threads that have been going for a while, coming together, and I'm really excited for people to actually read it. Hopefully, I put it across properly, but read it and get that moment, to get those moments where they've been waiting for these answers. And I've put a lot of time and a lot of thought into trying to make sure that those answers are really worth it, that they make sense, and that when you read them, you should be like, holy shit, or any appropriate response. And some of them are tiny. They're tiny little moments that have been there since the first book and are just sitting there in the background the whole time. And they're my favorite ones. They're just sitting there, and then you read it and you go, wait, you're fucking with me? This has been there the whole, like, and they're my favorite things. And because I have a Discord, and they have my ARC readers. We have a read along section. And so when the ARC readers are on it, they'll come in, they leave all their reactions. And I was only saying to them yesterday, it's one of my favorite things is to be able to sit there and then see people reacting in real time and be like, oh my God, this moment. And that's like one of the most rewarding things for an author, because you don't usually see that. You'll usually get a review. And if you read reviews, you get a review, and it's an overall thing. But watching someone's immediate response is really, really cool.
Well, you, Ryan, are looking forward to people reading this, but I can tell you that a whole lot of people are looking forward themselves to reading it.
Yeah.
So you've got some excited people out there. We are all pumped up. For Of Empires and Dust, I'm hearing nothing but enthusiasm and praise from your ARC readers at the moment. They're a lot of excitement out there. So yeah, we are looking forward. And of course, John and Christopher and Mike will be joining me. I'm not sure where our next discussion will be, but we will be discussing.
Can we really trust Mike to show up now after today?
He's only missed this once.
Yeah.
How do we know it's not meth? We don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, no one's checked.
We got to give Mike a lot of credit. He kept his mouth shut for the first.
He did a good job. He did a good job. Yeah.
Oh no, Mike's great when it comes to spoilers. He's not going to spoil you.
Yeah, he's a professional. But thank you so much, Ryan, for taking the time to sit with us.
Thank you.
This has been a joy. We are so looking forward to Of Empires and Dust. And that is it for. Thank you, everybody in the chat as well. You guys have been fantastic.
Yeah, there's still nearly 100 people on, which is.
I do apologize for missing any of your questions or comments. I did my best to get to as many as I could. Thank you to my friends Christopher and John, and we all wish Mike that he will be feeling better. But this is it, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll be around. I'm not sure when, but we'll make announcements when we're ready to talk about Of Empires and Dust. So
I'm
until
so
then.
excited.
Thank you, Ryan.
Excited to take a break. Thanks, guys.